This is just a quick walkthrough of the web interface on the QLI-32, if anybody's curious what it looks like. So just your overview page, and this actually gives you the status of any of the lights that are currently on your unit. If you hit a button on there, the mute just kicked in because I pressed the button. So just a quick little thing there. You have control, where you can basically duplicate what's on the front panel. You can set source, input mode, QLI status, QLI mode, and then what your surround inputs are all about. And obviously you change something, it's updating it on the unit and showing it on the up top. So real basic. You have equalization for all channels that you have configured, and this will depend on what you set elsewhere. But you can have EQ for every channel. You have a lot of choices in how it displays what it's going to measure. You can set your X curves, what kind of noise you want to use, and you can also auto EQ and choose which channels you want it to do. To do this, you need a microphone multiplexer and 4 mics, I believe it is, and it will then measure and EQ everything for you. And I believe when you're on the LFE, it's actually a parametric EQ. Yep, there you go. So you get a parametric EQ for the LFE channel, so you can dial that one in better than with the graphic EQ. Outputs is literally where you're changing your gains for your channels, or inverting them, muting specific ones. You have many, many different outputs. And on this, the surrounds are actually side speakers. Heights are your height channels, obviously. Above you, not your stage heights. Your stage heights are up here. And then rear surrounds. And how many of these you have kind of depends on what you set elsewhere. So if we go into the configuration, load or save, your room configuration is really what tailors the QLI processing. One of the nice things is you can set this to reasonable sizes that you would find in a home. It's not like there's no default that it's only auditorium sizes. So you set the width, the height of the room in the front, the length of the room, and then the same thing in the rear with an additional factor of if there's elevation relative to your front speakers. And then the reference position is based on, I believe, from your LFE, from basically front center. And that's, you give it X, Y, and Z coordinates, and they will use that to kind of tailor to the sound to that position. From that, you can also specify multiple seating areas, and it takes that into account too. I believe this would be more for a large theater that has basically different levels within it. And then you also have speaker locations. And then this is all from a fixed point. You're literally mapping out where each speaker is in the room, and that is used in the processing. So you're giving it X, Y, and Z from, like I said, I believe it's the center speaker, but it might be the center LFE, basically a central point. And then you literally tell it where every speaker is, or at least your first one in the pairs. And then down here is where you can map out how many speakers you're using. So your surrounds, which are sides in this speak, you have 2 pairs of surrounds, 3 pairs, 4, 5, up to 8 pairs of surround speakers. And how many of these you set will impact the others, because it's a 32 channel limitation. So you kind of can gain some or lose some depending on how many you pick. So for example, earlier it was set for 3 rears, but if I set 2 pairs of surrounds, then I can have 5 rear speakers. Same thing with the height channels. I can have 2 pairs, 3 pairs, or 4 pairs, and the heights are above the listener. These aren't stage heights. The stage heights are required, which is what the left high, center high, and right high right here are all about. So that's where you kind of map out what's your setup in your room. Routing is all about just what goes where on the analog input. You tell it what channel's what. Same thing if you're using the digital inputs. If you're using Blue Link, which is their proprietary connection with BSS, you can set it all here too for the channel numbers that are coming in, and the same thing for Blue Link outputs. And obviously this is where you're going to map what channel goes where, with 32 output channels. And this is where you would use like a Lexicon breakout box, or if you use BSS hardware, you could use a number of their different processors. So I'm probably going to be using Blue 160s for this, because that gives me additional DSP where I can hopefully handle base management in there, because there is not base management in the QLI-32, or at least not that I see anywhere. And this is how you map all the different channels in there. You have system information, where you just can set just general settings, QLI settings, a room factor adjust. No idea what this does yet. We'll find out. Setting your network time, and then site info, just where you name stuff. It also has some diagnostics, and the one that's a little interesting to me is if you look in the system logs, it's pretty clear it's running some form of Unix or Linux, most likely a form of Linux internally. And as part of that, I did a network scan, and it comes up, this is the port this is the IP address of it. So it looks like it was actually built by Ultra Stereo Labs, which I think QSC just bought a few years ago. And I was trying to see if there's any open ports. And there are actually a couple. So obviously the World Wide Web is for the web interface. There is a SSH port open, but without the login credentials, you're not going to be able to do much with that.
Port 10,001 is for telnet control, so you can change modes, inputs, that sort of thing. The commands are in the owner's manual.
The one that's kind of neat is if you could figure out the SSH, some of these are kind of interesting sounding files when it's parsing config files, like the EQ file or the outputs. But one of them in here, the QLI Theater, was kind of interesting, and there was, I think, like a QLI config, which I'm kind of curious what would be in that. I wonder if that's more of when Harman was originally demoing Quantum Logic, they were doing all sorts of tricks with pulling things out of streams and moving things around, and I wonder if that's kind of where that all fits into. But obviously, again, without having login, can't do much in there, or can't do anything in there. So that's kind of it.